of the time for questions because as we talked about before, there's kind of four parts we're looking at. The regulating plan, what is the map? Then there's the form, what is the frontage type? Where does the building sit on lot? That's what we've talked about up to now. The two parts we left off and said was the uses and the building form. So that's what we'll do tonight, and it's pretty simple. It's 3 slides. So all of the things you saw before, just like last time, take that out, because what we're proposing is the new language. And one of the paragraphs came over from the previous one, and this basically talks about what underlying zoning is. So this doesn't impact underlying zoning other than where it's at within each category. It talks about the use table for underlying zoning, so just matches those up. So that still uses within underlying zoning is still there. Now there's limitations, and that's in paragraph B, and these are the limitations. So we had a lot of prohibitions on what can be done, where it can be done, and those things. This is for all of the overlay districts. We've addressed what's existing. So our intent here is not to do anything with anything existing, but preventing standalone ice machines and ATMs. Those are the only prohibitions. And then certain uses will require site plan review. So if you remember everything in the previous version, everything required mandatory site plan review if it triggered. This is, there's 6 bullet points that we're proposing. We can add, remove, but car wash facilities, any request that includes a drive-through, hotel, motel, or bed and breakfast, more 20 rooms, automobile repair, service, and for service stations, and convenience stores. Now, for those who don't know the process of site plan review, that is a planning commission review on the site, so we can look, for instance, at a drive-through. Does the traffic flow, is it causing problems to 98? We can look at that project as a whole, and all of these items would be under that. We can look at what does that look like from the road. We can say, hey, there's might need to be some screen in this area. We can look at where your dumpster is located. Is that going to be pushed up to the front of the road, or is that going to meet or what we're trying to accomplish with providing a good aesthetic for the city? And then the other final bullet point within allowable uses, we've stated all along, parking to the side and the rear. I think we have pretty much responded to every singular comment we've had on this except for the parking in the front. And on the front, when we first began this conversation, or I guess not first began this conversation, but in September when I think the business owners came to the city, we said we would listen, and if we can come to a spot where we're 80% of the way there, I think we have addressed about 95% of the things. And I think we're kind of going to lean on the site plan and parking to the sides and rear. And that's it for the use restrictions in our proposal. The final is building form. This is exactly what you saw in the previous. We didn't change it. It's from our existing code on MVM, the neighborhood village district.
Yeah, so the village residential mix, the community village center, and the neighborhood village center are existing zoning districts within the zoning code. None of those have been implemented, but that's where that language came right of. That's where that language came from. We didn't create that from scratch. Replicated it from another part of the zoning ordinance.
That's right. So now from a form-based code, you've heard that, and how this is about as basic as it gets for form-based codes. So what we're looking at, and where this ties to, I think most importantly, is if we're pushing buildings to the road, it doesn't just need to be back of house. So that's what we're thinking on this, or that's our thinking. They need to be attractive buildings. but there's really no, I don't think heavy-handed, and this is, as we addressed in applicability, you know, just because you're getting a building permit for a dumpster or something, there's no, or planting trees, or even updating, you know, your building, it doesn't trigger this. So as we said before, applicability is if you increase your existing building size more than 50%. Come on in.
Dr.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you can sign in.
So that is what you haven't seen, and that's all we're proposing.
Right there.
You know, this is, I hope this, you know, we're kind of working our way through where and how to have these meetings. It's a busy time of the year for facilities in the city, so we had this one. I think this is a little different from the Nick Center, and if we need to spend the rest of the time just sitting around the table talking to clarify anything or address any outstanding issues, that's what we're here for tonight. So I guess this is also the first time seeing this from the Planning Commission, what we're proposing, and I'd like to offer them the opportunity first if they have any feedback or questions, and if not, open that up to any questions.
Okay, so wait, let's go back over to the front on the application and exemptions, just so everybody understands.
We're going all the way to the, okay?
Yeah, to the front, very first page. Anybody outside the city limits, not affected, right?
That's correct.
Okay, got it? Okay. Single-family residentially zoned parcels are not included, correct?
That's correct.
RA district, not included, right?
That's correct.
All right, no deals there. You know, the only thing the one thing that I had this discussion many times with the county in various zoning districts that came into, that voted to have zoning, was whether or not you created a zoned district as it stood, or whether you tried to be somewhat forward-thinking in how you wanted your district to be developed. So I ask you the same question now. I mean, we've got, if you think about Greeno Road, let's take it from Highway 104. You know, coming this way. All right, you got the park, you've got Colonial Acres, you've got the park, you've got some residential over on the east side. You keep coming, you had an old trailer park, you got the park itself. You keep coming, you're at Volana, and now you've got experiment station over there, and you've got residential on the east. What are y'all zoned now?
B2.
B2, so and then you got some B2 up there. But I mean, how do we get to the point of it not, you know, just being kind of a hodgepodge of whatever?
And I think that's a little bit of what's at stake here, and I think where all of this is coming from, why there was a need to do something. Although it's been in conversation for 18 years, I think we're seeing at least in the recent vernacular, and I went back and looked at all the comprehensive plans we've done, land use plans going back to '56, and the city was kind of planned around, you know, a village concept. So where commercial would be is at certain nodes, if you will. And at least during the last two, at both of those, it was proposed, why don't we switch 98 to a corridor, you know, like a regular commercial strip. That went over like a lead balloon. There was survey results from the people there at those meetings, and 98% of the people said, no way, we don't want that commercial to develop all the way up and down 98. as y'all know, you see it, part of our application process and our review procedures are reviewing based on the comprehensive code. So that's what the city council has put in the city's policy over the years. Well, we've had not just y'all's, but I think 4 or 5 other properties went commercial, PUDs, B2 within that area. And I don't think that's gonna slow down. You know, we're gonna get more of those requests.
Well, how many residential structures have been built in the last 40 years?
Yeah, it
On
has.
Greenell Road? None.
Yeah, and that's kind of I think those are the 2 things we're dealing with. And I think the previous plan we proposed addressed the people that were at the visual preference studies and those sort of, those meetings. And it went through a few months without any critique, and then I don't think most of the business owners were a part of those meetings. So we're trying to, at this point, I think, trying to balance those 2 things. And
But it goes back to just like what we were talking about this morning on the bayfront down by the pier.
mm-hmm.
You know, and I look at the visual preference
Mm-hmm.
stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, you know,
They're in the
that to me is about as hokey as anything that's about as kind as I can be about it.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you lay a visual preference where you've got Magnolia landfill in this picture and anything else in this picture, what are you gonna choose?
Right.
Yeah, you're gonna choose that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't tell me that is the that's the only alternatives that there are.
Sure.
And I know that everybody, when they look at visual preferences, a bunch of those pictures that we looked at on Greenell Road, visual preferences were, horrible picture here and something else over here. I'll tell you what you had. You had Airport Boulevard and a complete mess that it was, and something that was not as messy as that. Well, what is everybody going to choose? They don't choose Airport Boulevard. But then what are the options there?
Well, why don't we take a simple visual preference here and say, do you prefer the Big Lots Shopping Center? Do you prefer the Piggly Wiggly Shopping Center? Or do you prefer the public shopping center?
Well, but that would only be applicable to a shopping center.
But just saying, if you want a visual preferences, you can look at 3 different ones and say, okay, Fairhope is would grow. When we have larger shopping centers come in, which of these would we prefer? And then you can look at other buildings, that we have had built here. And you could go outside of the zoning and say, do you prefer the Washateria out at the intersection of 181 and 44, where there's no zoning exist? Or do you prefer a half step above that, where you've got the new Dollar General on Morphy Avenue, where we have, at least a little bit, a modicum of tree, preservation? Or you can go to one of the, more attractive buildings, that would say, do you prefer that or the, Myrick Insurance Agency?
Mm-hmm.
Or, you can point to a few. And I think what, we have the visual preference that a lot of people have attacked, because people are trying to attack anything they can. A lot of people are just against anything. And I'll be honest, I grew up on Turkey Branch, and I grew up outside of a zoned area. And when I go back to the area I grew up in, I just want to cry every time I drive by. It's where all the cell phone towers are, it's where all the trailer parks are, it's where all the steel buildings are with zero sidewalks, and it was so beautiful when I was young, and it's just nasty now.
Mm-hmm.
And, and the property values, are crap out there.
Well, I mean, there was no direction at all.
Exactly, and we're trying to do 2 things with this. One, we're trying to, have it so that one of the number 1 things people say is try to keep Airport Boulevard from looking like Airport Boulevard. So what the heck better visual preference can you have than Airport Boulevard? Is that one?
There's a lot of different. There's a lot between Airport Boulevard and maybe the medical profession.
If everybody says this is what we don't want, then that's where you got to start. What you don't want, it's a good place to start. And that's one of the big things we've been trying to do, is just not have it look like Airport Boulevard. So why not look at Airport Boulevard? Why not show Airport Boulevard? And how do we prevent this? Number 1, And then number two was the fairness, that every time we have rezoned properties, we've rezoned them as PUDs. But what happens to the people that don't have enough acreage for a PUD? And, you know, the Greens is the only exception that we made with the presentation that they brought us, and I would draw an argument that we probably could have done their program with a PUD as well, because they had some land taken, you know, by the state that would have put them to 3 acres had it not been, and that land was in a right of way, and I think we probably could have made an exception on that. But with that one exception, we rezoned nothing,
Yes, you have.
unless it's been a PUD that I can think
No,
of.
you
We were
rezoned
know that. or
Christy
mine.
Rayleigh's property, which is
After.
towards 104 from us on the opposite side of the street. You rezoned that to B2, about a year after ours was
Because that, I
rezoned.
think we rezoned the Myrick one because they were gonna save an older building, and that building got bulldozed.
And Miss Riley.
Miss Rayleigh's
Um,
straight up B2 zoning there.
Is that, what is
It's in
on that now?
between the trailer park and the Hayek Pud. It's that small piece of property.
But we tried, you know, we've been trying, and everyone says, look, you know, you don't wanna live there, so we've just been trying to get that balance. And I tell you, I'm, you know, looking at what the city's done, and how much the city has, you know, worked, I've never seen, you know, so much work, and listening to input from the public as much as in this project, and it's not, you know, here's what you have to do, this is set in stone, one option. I mean, there are quite a few options, and if I were a property owner on Greeno, I think I would be very happy, because the truth is, with what's being done, for the most part, you've got more options than you had beforehand. I mean, we look at some of the areas that you know, we're addressing, you know, on, you know, with the grandfathered in and things like that, we give them more latitude. We look at the setbacks of pulling forward, and in a lot of cases with what we're doing, in more cases than not, you know, we're creating more square footage people can, you know, build on. We're just saying, hey, here are a few things to try to make it attractive for your neighbors, so you don't, you know, screw them. But overall, I think y'all have done an incredible job, a lot better job than I could have ever dreamed up in my life, as far as all of the options that are there and the way it works together. I think y'all have done a heck of a job, and, you know, I don't see how really be against this much, other than sometimes when you're against something to start with, even when what you were against changes, it's hard to, you know, switch to the other team.
Yeah. And Art, let me kind of understand that where we started on this, and I think there's no one that can criticize us for not listening.
No, you're right.
There's no one on that, and what we've relied on is feedback. That's been the ultimate guiding principle of our revisions. And at some point, we have to call that quits and start getting to work. And Beaufort Revised spent weekends and nights up here trying to get through this. And what we've relied on is feedback. So that's the guiding principle of what it looks like. Not what we brought some ideas to the table, but then how does that evolve? And that's where everyone else's opinions have come in. So we have about 2 more weeks to make revisions and present something to the Planning Commission, and then if it's just no, there's somewhere around 6 weeks between Planning Commission and Council, and that's the time to just say no. But if there's anything, I mean, you know, I think last minute, one of the critiques I've heard was, well, we don't really want buildings up front. It's the first time I've heard it. We've been asking for feedback since September. You know, that if there's any feedback looking at this, you know, that's we can take that into account. But I do want to, especially business owners here, because we spent so much time talking about where this is at. We told you from the get-go, this is only within the city limits. But we spent so much time clarifying that and clarifying is it about annexing, you know, south of town. Those things have never been part of it, and they got wrapped up into this. That's right. They've never been part of this.
But they will be.
That is a slippery slope argument. If we say everything that potentially can happen in the future, we will never approve anything. And we will not be ready to address the growth that is happening in this town right now. So.
What generally happens is, this is just, to me, it's like an appraisal. When you sit down and do an appraisal of your property, what is an appraisal? It's a value as of a picture of value at a specific period of time. And I agree with what Hunter says. You can't guess what's gonna happen out in the future. What we've got right now is what we've got right now, and that's what we need to deal with. What happens in the future, that's yet to be seen, and there's nothing else that you're gonna do about it.
Yeah.
You're not gonna go down there and talk to those people and bring them in here and think you're gonna get anything of any substance out of it. The only question back to the, when you come off of 104 coming south, where you get a group of residential properties,
Mhm.
what, and I'm thinking now as a planning commission, or the city council for that matter, if you get 2 or 3 of them that go together, well, maybe they go separately.
Mhm.
2 or 3 of them go together, put 3 acres, got enough acreage to do PUD,
Mhm.
but maybe they go individually, and they got a 1 acre lot.
Right.
You know, I mean, where it's situated, certainly you're not gonna put a Burger King or something in the middle of, in the middle of all that. So what I'm trying to get is the same argument we had when Wayne died,
Mhm.
all those years in Baldwin County, is what would we expect in terms of coming south down to Fairhope Avenue
Mhm.
in those areas that are still residential, in terms of what we might consider allowing them to do.
Right.
PUD is one thing, but what if they come individually?
And I think that, let me answer your question with kind of what I'm struggling with. Because what we're looking at on any case, when we start doing a review, and some of these things never hit public, so to think it's only about a couple of properties here, that in cases that are on the books is naive. We see many other options come to us. So anything we look at the city's policy. What is current policy? And our policy right now says don't develop commercial. So
The residential.
the residential in those areas. So that is policy is the instructions for staff. That's the way I view it. And then it's planning commission and council's, opportunity to change those policies. So the struggle I have, and planning staff here has been asked to kind of make recommendations. I can just put, here's what the standards are. So that's the same struggle I have. Can I recommend something that goes against the city policy? And I think that's a challenge you and council have as well. And this changes the policy. It gives a comfort level to then developing this. What seems like, at least during this whole conversation, everybody wants. So now, as far as specific uses in that area, we don't have that here. We're kind of looking at it as a whole, because we did get some critique on we're applying different rules to certain people, and that's not fair. So at least in that transitional area, it's not necessarily about uses. It's about what it looks like and is it impacting traffic, and we'll view that through the site plan.
So that's the main thing that people are concerned about, is the looks. And as far as, what we were talking about earlier, the areas, south or, that are out of the city limits, if they wanted to come into city limits, what normally we do is we say, well, one of 3 things happens. Either we say, these are what we like in the city limits. If you want to come to the city limits, we're going to require this.
Mm-hmm.
And, sometimes, you've got an example of that right now, Mr. Corey with the shopping center and the apartments up there on 104 and Highway 181 said, well, I don't want to come to the city. I don't want to play by your rules. I want it to look like how I want it to look. And I don't care what y'all think, and I'll do it out of the city limits. So that's his prerogative.
That's right.
And on the other hand, I was hoping with where his would go, and kind of the other option is when somebody is like that, and there are some benefits to come into the city limits, if there are, tap fees or different, benefits coming into the city limits. I've always believed in the 80-20 rule, that you say, okay, look, I know you've got that option, and that, that baseball bat you can swing at us, that you can always go and develop in the county, do whatever you want. But look, how about if we allow you to come in the city limits and you just do these 20% of the things that we like that make 80% of the difference visually, and you know, we'll give you a concession on the others. And that's basically the three ways that it ever happens. Either, you know, here's everything that we want, because, you know, we've got the leverage to require that because they have to come in the city for whatever reason. Or if they don't, then, you know, I'm gonna take my toys and play in my own sandbox and the heck with y'all. Or the compromise down the middle where you say, well, gosh, don't go and use the county and, you know, have it be that bad. Just maybe do these few things and we'll let you get along.
Well, and that certainly that works, but it goes back to the old adage, you don't start a precedent, you can't carry on forever. So when the next one comes and they want a little bit, there's no way that you can fit it in a box, because the box always gets bigger. If you gave Billy Bob this, and when Bubba comes, Bubba wants something else. And so the question is, how do you limit it? And my attitude about it, and it's just my attitude, certainly it's just one opinion, but my attitude is, if it gets to the point that they're unreasonable in that, let them stay in the county. I mean, that's certainly their prerogative, but it's not for us to make that decision.
I think there's a lot of validity to that. I think sometimes you can cut your nose off to spite your face.
Sure you can.
But I think there's times when there's, you know, when you have to draw the line in the sand. And, you know, and I think you and I both agree in that. Now, where you draw the line and where I draw the line, it's probably a little different. You probably, you know, develop a little sooner. I'll probably be walked over a little bit more. But, you know, that's just kind of, you know, we all have kind of, you know, where we come from. And that's why it's, you know, nice having different people on the Planning and Zoning Commission is, you know, we all want to do what's best for Fairhope. And, you know, we try to put, you know, you've changed my mind a number of times on this commission, you know.
As y'all are just having a conversation amongst yourselves, somewhat excluding us, maybe y'all can do this later. I got a question. Oh, what's the genesis of this form base? What does that entail? That's one question. Number two, what'd y'all do with the buffering requirements? I believe it's 4B initially, where you gotta get a permit.
You sent that email, I never found it. I never found that buffering. It wasn't in the previous
Well, okay,
proposed.
fine. At this point in life, did you abandon that buffering whereby you cut a tree, plant a tree, cut a bush, plant a bush?
You talking about the tree ordinance? We have, we
Buffering, I think it's 4B, if you got that overlay from the overlay, in development in there. You didn't see that?
I looked and did not see, there wasn't a 4B section in the overlay district. There wasn't that.
Anyway, so
and I
nothing
didn't
like
see
that's in
anything
the new
about-
one, right?
This is it.
Okay. And what's this form base? What does that entail?
Where a building is
What-
sited on the lot.
Okay, I
Form
think
base technically means you're more concerned about the looks than you care about.
I can tell that. How many times have I heard Airport Boulevard, Airport Boulevard, Airport Boulevard? Yeah, I'm tired of hearing about that crap.
Quit coming to meetings then.
Sir?
Well, we live
I couldn't hear
here,
you, I'm
we
sorry.
want our place to be like we want. We want people telling us what to do all the time. You know, you're putting restrictions on people that own land and live here, and then we can't use our property for what we would like to have. None of us are here because we don't like Fairhope. We love Fairhope, and we like the Fairhope to be a nice place. People move here because they like to be here, okay? And I'm sorry about speaking up, but I can't hold it back much longer. People move into town, they want to have their restrictions where they came from. We want Fairhope to be, you know, like it is. And we don't want people to put restrictions that are going to interfere with the use of our property, not that we want to make it any worse. Okay?
Well, let me ask, that's a good point, but let me ask you a question for clarification. The use of your property, if you've got a zone, if you're in a zone district, you're in the city, you're in the city,
Yeah.
is it zoned?
It is zoned.
Okay.
And I
all right.
acquired property.
I don't even know how.
Okay.
But if it's zoned, then the underlying zoning, you've got a set of rights to develop that piece of property. Is it really that big of a deal in terms of not the use, but the way the building is situated on the lot? Does that create, because I'm missing something about
Yeah,
the
well, I
confusion
acquired.
associated with the right to use your property and something that is more aesthetically uniform or at least flows together.
Yeah, I may not be able to change my property because of the restrictions y'all are putting on the Greeno Road. And there's a small piece of property.
Wait, I don't understand. And I'm gonna interrupt you, but go ahead, I wanna hear.
Yeah.
What do you mean you can't change your
A
property?
while back, somebody brought before the Planning and Zoning Commission, changing the zoning to have a baseball, where they practiced baseball and hit baseballs. And I didn't think it was big enough. They brought it before the commission, and I decided to buy that piece of property.
Talking about batting,
That's correct, batting cages.
yeah.
And I bought that piece of property, and I thought it was a lot bigger than it was. It turned out to be like a quarter of an acre instead of an acre and something. So I don't know if they would have been able to fly, but I have now frontage on Greeno Road.
Mhm.
But there are other people that have property on Greeno Road, and they may have visions for their property at some point in time. And I just can't imagine somebody building something would be ugly here in Fairhope.
Well, you're talking about they want to build something, but you're talking about use, not aesthetics, but you're talking about use.
Use of the property to be able to, so the piece I acquired is useless because I can't do anything with that little piece of property now. It's connected to my property, but I'm not speaking for myself. I'm speaking for all the residents here of Fairhope that we're concerned about the regulations and restrictions you're putting on these properties that we may not be able to use.
Let me ask you.
Like, I just heard the other day, you were talking very nicely in front of everybody, and there was a piece of property brought up for change. And they had like 4 acres, but they're only able to build on a half an acre because of all the restrictions that are being put on the greening and this and the access to roads. And you got a 4-acre property now shrunk into half an acre, or a little bit more than half an acre to be able to build on. So I don't know how it's going to affect the property values of the
You talking
people.
about at the last planning commission meeting?
It was, yes.
Thompson Hall Quadplex is
The
Yes.
Thompson Hall property?
Yes, sir. That's the only one I've ever been to in my life.
That's, yeah, nothing to do with that. And you're talking about regulations that have been in place for 60 years.
60 years?
Yeah, I mean, subdivision and zoning has been around forever.
No, I'm not talking about those regulations specifically. We're talking about adding the greening and all that other stuff. Those weren't around 60 years ago.
We don't
Talking about green space.
that's not addressed.
Correct.
Okay? So that's not a.
Well, he asked me
that's
questions. I was
subdivision
allowing to answer the questions that Art asked.
Bottom line, there are places that don't require green space.
Yeah.
Well, and let me,
Places that don't have much zoning, and when you look at those values compared to places that do require the zoning,
Downtown.
and you look at the values, 20 years down the road, the ones that have the zonings, the values are always up 20 years later compared to the ones that don't have zoning. That attitude of, oh, people are always gonna build pretty stuff because this is Fairhope, is a misnomer.
well, let me ask you a specific question, because that's what I want to clarify.
I'll argue that point.
All right. You said it's been this way and restrictions about the people that have been here in Fairhope. Do you feel the same way if it's a corporate headquarters that are in Texas, California, or somewhere else that is going to come put, because this is the reality we're dealing with. Does that change your opinion? Do we now need to be looking at them and saying, we're going to make sure what you build is attractive and is appropriate for Fairhope?
I don't know how you can envision a corporate company coming from Texas and coming over here to build in Fairhope.
Franchises, I mean, that absolutely happens.
The bottom line,
You
look
have
at the
a
Dollar
value.
Generals. I mean, Dollar General will come in and they will do the absolute minimum of what you make them, but they won't complain about it.
Yeah.
They'll do whatever you make them, just like Publix.
So we're restricting this city to be only beauty. That we have to have plastic surgeons to rebuild the city to make it look nice. The people that aren't pretty have to live elsewhere in the city.
Exactly.
We're a conglomerate of people within the city itself.
Yeah, I think Fairhope has a certain standard, and I don't apologize for that.
And I remember back
Look at
along.
Silver Hill, they don't have a standard, and look at Silver Hill, you got a beautiful city, and now there are 2 Dollar General buildings, because the first one wasn't big enough, so you've got 2 still Dollar General buildings. You got all these turds in a punch bowl that are making Silver Hill look less and less attractive. And if Silver Hill had some zoning and had some form-based zoning, Silver Hill could be one of the most attractive municipalities in the future, but the direction it's going, it's not going to be. And if you look at Robbinsdale,
the thing to me that seems, and I've been here a long time, like a lot of y'all
Used to have the triangle up there where you couldn't build what you wanted to because you were restricted, and then you ended up having to sell it to the city.
Yeah, tell me about it.
I'm telling you about it right now. I mean, this is stuff that's happening, man.
We don't need to
We got
go
a
there.
city.
But what we know is things change over long periods of time, right? So what was here in the 1920s, 30s, 40s, 50s, compared to what was here in the 1990s, 2000, 2010, what's going to be here in 2030, everything from construction to all the other aspects of it changed. What's in downtown, we're not going to ever, I would venture to say, we'll never replicate fruit and nut district anywhere out in another place. It just doesn't happen because of modern construction. But
Well, it's evolving on its own.
I'm sorry?
It's evolving on its
Yeah,
own.
it is, you're right. They're tearing down all the old.
It's
little
not the
ones.
old cottage in the
Oh, no,
middle
it's
of an
not. I
acre
mean,
lot.
that's right. They're tearing down the little
Subdivision. And
1,200
we've
square
allowed
foot
some of
houses
that.
and building a.
But they're not building any ugly places. They're making it better.
Oh,
And the sad part about
using out of the
it,
home.
I don't have to agree with that.
maybe I haven't been looking over there. I used to live on the fruit nut section, wanted to live there. But
My question
our
was
mayor's
that I
family
needed
ended up
that I
moving
needed-
back in.
I needed to understand is the concern about the use or the aesthetics, or both?
it's
Because the
combination.
use is set by the underlying
Yeah.
zone.
My concern is the overall situation that they're doing and making it a corridor where people may not be able to use their property like they want to. May not be able to change the use of their property that's in accordance with what Fairhope has been like. Not they're trying to build some Dollar General or something else or some poop squad in Silver Hill like this gentleman Turner talked about, having over there. If you don't like to go there, don't go over there. People are moving into Fairhope because they like Fairhope. Too many people are moving
That's
here.
how we want to keep it.
Well,
And I mean, and it hurts Silver Hill when I decide that I don't want to go there, because maybe I don't like the aesthetics, maybe it's the feeling that you get when you go there, and you don't go to the Acadia restaurant, because you don't like the view or the warmness. I mean, we're sitting here right now discussing whether or not we like zoning or not.
That's that.
And I think the point is that, that's a discussion for another day. And I remember Charlie Ingersoll used to be the #1 person against zoning in the world in downtown Fairhope, and in Fairhope in general. He was a staunch, private property rights person. And then I remember when a cell phone tower came in next door to him, and he came to me, and he was the one that raised a lot of money fighting against zoning. And when that came in, he came to me saying, "What can we do to stop it?" And I was like, "Charlie, you don't have zoning out there at your house. You can't do a darn thing to stop it." And, that's the point with the zoning is we all want to do what we want to do with our property, but we don't want our next door neighbor to. And I say this, I own a building in downtown on Mobile, and I wish that area had zoning. I've got 18,000 square feet vacant out of a 30,000 square foot building, and I'm willing to rent it at $4 a square foot. I've got a building in Baymonette that I get $6 a square foot
Lee,
for.
what does this have to do with Green Hill Road?
It
Can
has
we
to
get-
do with-
Can we get back on?
It has to
on
do
the others?
with, people say they don't like zoning, but when you go areas that have zoning, the property values go
But
up
some of
and
us
the
could
rate
speak,
goes up.
please.
And I'm simply saying that the argument of, we're taking property values away, or the city's taking property values away. I'm simply saying, I've got buildings in Fairhope, I've got a dog in the hunt as well, and I'm a property owner. That's what I'm saying, but go ahead and speak.
Please, here's some relevance to what Dr. Rockday was trying to explain. When the state of Alabama put the right-of-way down to Greener Road, they created a whole bunch of remnant properties, one of which was what he ended up with, that 1/4 acre. There are many, many other properties too small to be developed with that increased buffer area in your transitional zones that's 20 feet. The other thing that's so relevant to where he lives, which is on the corner of Atlanta, is if there's any kind of development that takes place there at that corner, why doesn't Hunter that instantly become not a transitional district but a core district? Because there'll be a light at Atlanta, and what you explained at the last meeting, the core districts are based on red lights. Instantly there would be a red light at Atlanta. If our property is developed commercially, there will instantly be a red light at Coyle Street.
Sure.
Doesn't
That
that change?
changes the whole dynamic of what you're doing here.
That is a great understanding of how this can be flexible for future generations, but we don't want to put it instantaneous because that's an evolution. So yes, a future planning commission and council can say, hey, we now have a light here, this needs to be addressed this way. But let me address I think there's a big misunderstanding, and I'm really surprised that, and I may be confused, because within the tree ordinance that you were a part of implementing, very integral to that process, which has created a new visual or that makes Fairhope unique. The 20-foot is not arbitrary. That right now is a green space buffer required by the tree ordinance that you helped create. We're not adding anything additional. You know, probably the biggest critique here is actually maybe that we're reducing that in some of the areas. That's kind of the visual that maybe we're saying you only have to have a 10-foot buffer in some areas instead of 20.
I guess my argument would be, I don't see that you have differences between districts along Greeno Road. I don't think you can say that because Dr. Rod Fayo's property is now not developed, that it has a different buffering than some property that's now in a 4, or what's your third district? Not the
Transitional
district. There's a sameness to it, and it's all developed rather attractively, and I appreciate Lee actually proved, I think everyone here proved the point that Greeno Road is developing beautifully under all of your ordinances that are in place now.
That's a very subjective thing, and that's not the opinion of everybody polled. Let's just leave it at that. I mean, that's a subjective argument. We can't win that.
Okay.
Well, there's another argument here too, in that the city actually, who should be the first to set the example, if the city is so concerned about what is being built along Greeno Road, then why is the city not concerned with all the power poles and the power lines, and at every intersection you can stop and look, and there must be anywhere between 16 to 20 different signs and posts, visual clutter at every single intersection along Greeno Road. Mm-hmm. And all of that seems to be perfectly okay.
And the city's exempted themselves from the ordinance.
They've exempted themselves from the ordinance, and not only that, you guys have again put us in a penalized state of being in a transitional area. And the mayor and some other people, and I'm not sure it's done, said and done and over with because of some emails and some information that I have, but the property just to the north to us, the Seaman Capital property, the mayor was trying to buy that for baseball fields. So the city's going to tell us that we have to build something akin to what the diocese built across the street. Has to be all pristine with, you know, you have to tell me how much glazing or glass I have on each floor, and you know, I have to have 4-sided architecture, and on and on and on. Meanwhile, the city can come up right next door to me and put parking and lights and kids
Have
and
you seen a
parks.
Plan for that at all? This was
hold it.
We're not exempt from this. There's no exemption from the city on this.
So the city is.
We don't. There's okay, and there is. Well,
it's a matter of Alabama case law. Municipal property used for a governmental function, it simply isn't, the zoning laws don't apply to that, because the city has to provide governmental functions, and sometimes it's a place where it owns land that it can make those services available, or whatever that function is limited, so we don't subject that type of municipal property to zoning laws, and that's a matter of Alabama case law. City, generally speaking, city property devoted to a proprietary purpose is subject to the zoning laws.
But in the case
I think we gotta get a board of justice and appeals
aesthetics
to
is
do a
what we're talking
substation
about,
of this.
though.
well, and I can tell you what we looked
wrote
at.
that in.
And these are visions. And let me, Richard.
But I
Just
thought
so
we just said we're exempt.
I'm sorry. That's talking Richard.
I was just wondering why.
I want to clarify, and I'm not negating this. I'm coming back to it because I want to tie it in together. When you talked about form-based codes, there's many type of form-based codes, and I know what y'all thought of as form-based codes. We're coming to tell you what to paint the building, and that is, when you look at form-based codes, that's one type. What we're proposing is called a frontage type, and it's where the building sits on the site, and that's all it is. So I want to be clear there. But let me get. I'm getting back to Bobby and Deborah. What we looked at there was every city property. and we looked at what's here. Instead of looking at pictures on the internet and things like that, what is here and what have people said is attractive? And we looked at those to create these. So we looked at the city properties. I mean, one of them's example is the high school property. That's not city, but it's a public piece of property. We looked at Valenta. We looked at the park that's there, Gayford, we looked at the city-owned property. So we haven't negated what the visual is. I mean, I think the city's done pretty well with their properties, making those visually appealing. What you're talking about with utilities in the right-of-ways, that's really a bigger issue, but I know utilities that don't belong to the cities have certain rights.
We don't want to raise rates and we don't want to borrow money, so we're
That's
not
right,
doing
and we
anything.
got to do something effectively
I'm
and
sorry.
efficiently.
Richard, Mr. Richard Peterson, can you just speak briefly on this? First of all, the city, correct me if I'm wrong, the City of Fairhope Public Utilities is a purchaser of electricity from Alabama Power.
Yes.
And we have distribution from Riviera Utilities passing through Fairhope.
Yes.
So we cannot force either of those entities to place their utilities underground without paying for it. Would that be a correct statement?
That's true, and it's very expensive to put the higher voltage lines underground. I mean, to do that, I think EMC's working on some of that with Gulf Shores, and they're just piecemealing it as they can, and it's very expensive, and I think there's a $5 a month.
Well, I can speak for my family's property at the Triangle. When they got ready to change the line coming down the 4-lane coming south, and they got to the Triangle, and then they shot from the Triangle across and went back behind, what was it, the Woodlands?
Right.
And then came out to the substation, and they were trying to get to where they were going. And we tried to get them to put power underground. They were quoting us that we would have to pay for it. They weren't going to pay for it. They weren't going to put it underground. Rock Creek wanted them to put it underground also, but they wouldn't do it. And what they said is, oh, well, if you'll write us a check for $2 million, we'll be happy to put it underground because those cables are so expensive for that. But we're not talking about a distribution line. I mean, we're talking about a dadgum transmission line.
Right.
And so you've got the difference between night and day between those types of cables. But they wanted millions of dollars for us to put it underground just on the Triangle, not up and down the 4-lane.
It's about $1 million a mile from my understanding in a development authority that I served on. That was 6 or 8 years ago. $1 million a mile to.
But was that where? In a transmission line or in a distribution
That was
line?
in the middle of downtown Denver.
In downtown there, okay.
It was all
Riviera's
power.
distribution line ends at the north corner of our property and then goes east. And the power lines, if I'm not mistaken, Richard, from that point south are all City of Fairhope. And yes, it would be expensive, but more than any other thing you can do for Greeno Road, that one thing is much more important than placing the financial burden on property owners who own Greeno Road.
Where do you think the financial burden would be placed if the City of Fairhope put those lines underground?
How about
It'd be
BPO money?
distributed evenly.
But it's going to be on the
Oh,
people
yeah.
of the city of
And I would
Fairhope.
be happy to pay my fair share.
Fair share, yes.
Okay.
Come on.
Yeah, right.
I want to go back to your visual preference survey, which Art was right on spot. You know those things are stacked, just like he said.
Absolutely.
Pretty in. All right. You were talking about all this input you've had from all these people, and the only time y'all got on the business community is when we started that petition, and y'all came and talked to us.
You're absolutely right.
All right.
Okay, that's
all right.
you're
All right.
absolutely right.
Let me tell you, I don't know how many people you're talking about your input and stuff, but Fairhope was developed without any zoning as strict as this. Lee Turner's been here a while. I've been here a little longer than Lee. I was born in downtown Fairhope, and I've seen boarded up stores there. Zoning did not make Fairhope what it is. It's the citizens and the businesses. And you tick off one of the two, you're going to have a problem. And the businesses create the tax base for this city. 65% is collected by the businesses. There wouldn't be a citizen here without the businesses. There wouldn't be a business here without the citizens. It's a symbiotic relationship. There's no question about it. But when you're talking about all this input from all these other people, businesses are always outnumbered. 1,000, 10,000 to 1. We always have a minor voice, okay? But you put all this stuff on the citizens say this, the citizens say that. They're not spending a dime on this thing right here. It all falls on the business community to spend their money and develop it the way you want it. It's called planning. Now, we can get in a discussion about that anytime you want to, but planning, you need some. You don't need a bunch.
Okay.
And what we have is fine. I don't know where the impetus of this comes, but I got an idea. But here's the thing. We've developed fine this way. There's not one ugly thing been built on Greeno Road. Okay? And now you want to change it to this. And you talk about future. I know what you're saying. You can't plan for the future any better than we can. The future's going to take care of itself. If there's one thing on Greeno Road you're never going to change is traffic. What makes Airport Boulevard and Greeno Road not too nice for us now is the traffic. You can't change that. People are coming here. You want to make Fairhope more attractive so you can attract more people here? Fine. I'm just saying all the burden is on the businesses. And you need to take a little bit more consideration, and you were talking about all this other input. I'm going to tell you, we've got several thousand people that don't want this, just so you know.
Okay, let me address that, because you're right in one sense. If you said that y'all business community didn't know this when the visual preference survey happened, what I'm talking about is not input from that side of the community. I'm talking about since September, since y'all all showed up. We have opened our doors every day and said it in every public meeting. Please come to us and tell us what you want this to look like. This is not Hunter Simmons' plan.
I know that.
This is not anybody on the planning commission's plan. This has been your opportunity as a community, and we've looked at what we've planned these around is what is here. We haven't looked outside of this community. We didn't look at the visual preference survey and those pretty pictures. We looked at what's built here in this environment within our corporate limits right now, and we've relied on y'all to come tell us where we missed the point.
Let me ask you this, where's all this other input for the non-business community? Where do you get all that? Where do you have it documented?
That's the last, it's not a part of this. That's where we're missing the point here. No. That's a fight. You're fighting and not helping us get to a solution we can all live with.
That's because my big question is, why do you want to change it? Why do you want to put more restrictions?
Well, there's no owners in here that is going to cost so much extra money than what you're doing now anyway.
Well, let me say this, that you are absolutely right in a lot of areas that, you know, business has made a huge, huge difference, and people, you know, being willing to raise the bar. You know, when a number of years ago, and a person that's always forgotten about in Fairhope, and you'll remember him, and smile when I say his name, but Buddy Richland.
Yep.
You know, he drew a design that today people are still putting the flower beds in, of an original design that he drew. And Howard Wolf came in when all those streets are boarded up, and he was from Germany, and he got $1,000 from the Rotary Club that he was a member of, and the city put those trees downtown. My granddad, you know, bitched about it because he knew that the concrete was going to get broken up and was going to tear the foundation on his building, and he was so upset that he was going to have trees in front of his building there on Fairhope Avenue and you know, Section Street. And thank God we didn't listen to him and not plant trees in downtown. Because how much better is downtown with the trees, and how much did all those trees and planning and showing and interest in the downtown make a difference? And people like John Mathey then started building buildings. And, you know, I built a couple over there that at the time, you know, I put a wall out and made stucco, and I put, you know, where the southern veranda is, you know, I have those 5 buildings, and I landscaped them when nobody landscaped in downtown.
Making my point.
And then all of a sudden somebody else did better. But I did that because of the vision that people had prior of putting the trees downtown. There was nothing to do with us in the business, and the business community was arguing against putting the trees in downtown because we were worried about our concrete busting up.
Not all of them.
And so,
not all of them. So here's the thing.
So the point is people take steps. And,
I know.
And as far as Greeno, the Single Tax Corporation did a step that actually lowered the traffic on Greeno Road 8%, and that was by cutting Troyer Booth through. And that was a single tax project, single tax done by single tax money, and it lowered the Greeno traffic 8%. Now that's since gone back up, but it was a step, that and County Road 13, and we have looked at things that we can do to, with connectivity to try to take the pressure off of these main arteries. And it's done by sitting and thinking and by leadership and doing things like this is what makes Fairhope better, not, restrictions for the sake of restrictions, but vision and direction. And that's what we're trying to do here.
You made my point. The trees, the flowers, that was the citizens and the businesses working together. As nobody said, you need to put these flowers in, you need to put these trees in. They did it because of their pride in the community. That's the same thing with Reno Road. Now, you go into central planning here and you want to dictate. Now, last time I checked, admittedly, it's not like it used to be, but this country was founded on individual rights, not community rights. So, you can tell what side of the coin I'm on, and I'll argue with it till hell freezes on. But the thing is, it is a difference between individual rights and planned rights. And planning has a bad connotation for a lot of people in this world. Central planning is not where we want to be.
But nobody likes a cop till somebody's trying to kick your front door in.
Hey, like I said, what's the ugly building built on Reno Road? And where's all this landscaping coming from? Pride in the citizens and the businesses.
I'm going to add something. My name is Casey Williams, Casey Gay Williams. Some of you may have known my dad, Charlie Gay, who was over the chamber for many years, an architect in our area, working with Buddy Richmond, and worked very hard to bring back downtown Fairhope and do a lot of house plans. Worked on the boat. We got the boat coming back, just telling you. So I am Casey. I grew up here, ran around the chamber growing up my whole life. My high point was being the parade judge of the Christmas parade when I was 8. I peaked really early. So I have grown up in this community. I live in the house that I was brought home from the hospital in. And I have no doubt that every single person in this room would build, design, and do what they needed to do for our community to be aesthetically pleasing. But I also left a very lucrative position to become the Chamber of Commerce president because I wanted to work for the Eastern Shore. I wanted to convene, collaborate, and put people together so that we can manage the growth that is here and coming more every day. And I have people that walk in the office every day. I want to live here. I want to move here. Well, I want to tell you my little story. My little house across the street, somebody bought the other house, and I cannot tell you the mess they made of what I had to look at every day.
Well, Fruit and Nuts District is a prime example. They're tearing down all the small.
There you are.
But look, if planning and zoning is the answer, how come there's no parking in downtown Fairhope? There's no tree ordinance in downtown.
There's actually, I just want to finish. What I want to say is there are people that are going to move and come into our area and they could not care less about the aesthetics. They could not care less about a lot of things that would be important to us if they were to happen. And I'm just saying that there has to be in some form or fashion because we aren't going to be in control. Buddy Richmond is gone. My dad is gone. A lot of people who had a vision and helped all work together with business and individuals to make downtown Fairhope what it is, to make the Eastern Shore what it is. But we're not all going to be the only people making those decisions. And while maybe, as I said, maybe this isn't perfect, but what would be the place where we can manage growth? Because I can tell you a lot of places that people to this day say, well, I wish they thought about this when they built it. Wish they'd have thought about this when they were putting it together. And by the time it's done and built, it is too late. It is too late to manage growth. People want to manage the growth, the highways, the byways, the roadways. Somehow, whatever, I'm not a proponent for or against at this point. I'm just saying, if we don't manage and have some way to keep things aesthetically pleasing and our communities the way that we enjoy them today, they will be gone and it will be too late. And that's my my personal knowledge of what I've seen happen in other areas of the Eastern Shore in Baldwin County. And yeah, we're going to do it right, but we're not going to be the only people doing things and building things and creating things in our community.
And that's very,
Can I speak?
sure.
First of all, I'm glad little Mike's bringing the boat back open and seeing on the way. I'm from here also, and what scares me is there's a lot of people that are coming in here from everywhere, and the growth is what scares me more than anything. I agree with what you're saying, but I don't think that that's the case anymore, that we have to do something. And I do agree with an overlay to an extent, and I'm sorry you guys seem to have a terrible job. I thought mine was stressful. So thank you for what you're doing. There's got to be planning. There can't be too much planning. I just kind of want to know how it works with certain. We own a property across the street from our house. It's a little over ½ an acre, and it backs up to that R1 property that's still R1. There's nothing on it now, so I guess that's going to turn into one big lump property.
Where's the property?
It's on in between Wesley. It's on Wesley in between Edwards and Gaper. There's that property. It's a Walker property. It's a big open lot right there on the east side of 98.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot across the street from our house. We're still thinking about building on it. We're kind of in a holding pattern with it because we were going to kind of build a separate addition across the street from our house, or maybe sell it, build something, who knows, build an office. That's our concern, is how that's all going to fold in to the community, to an existing neighborhood, so to speak. So we don't have a Taco Bell in our front yard. And I know that's not, it's, what did you say? It's a site survey, or something that would have to go.
But we wouldn't. I mean, we couldn't just say no to the Taco Bell.
No, I mean, if Fairhope was what Fairhope was, and when I was a kid, I would say absolutely we don't need to do all this, but it's not. It's not. We got people coming in from everywhere, every day, and that's what scares me.
And I agree, and I think that's a given. Things are not going to be static.
But where does it end? Where does the
Well,
planning end?
I don't think it ever ends, does it?
Okay.
Does it ever end?
There's,
It ends twice?
3 times, 4 times.
Okay.
As long, I don't mind being contentious whatsoever, but as long as we have a planning and zoning department, planning and zoning department's only job, I'm not exaggerating, is bring property rights from the individual to the government. That's all they do. Every time I see the planning come in, the rights start moving from us to them. Is that funny?
it is.
It is. It's
a
not funny.
conspiracy.
Number two, if y'all had really been listening to the people, owners of Reno Road, this thing would have been the can. I know nobody on Reno Road that wants it. So I don't know who y'all listen to, but you're not listening to us. Number three, and I'll be done with this stuff forever. If form base is what I think it is that what's going in across from the food tiger? We would not have any, and if it's like going to be laid out like these little pictures here, it would not have been one road widening in the area because it'd be all cluttered up with these setbacks and things. If we had that form base, I see it to be no more road widening.
That's a big problem. I've heard everybody say that. That's a big problem. I've heard everybody say is we keep widening these roads and that's causing traffic.
Well,
that would limit on the road widening.
That's
so
what planning does. It opens up roadways, prepares for the future.
No, that's transportation planning. You don't have a transportation planner in the city of Fairhope.
Well, maybe we need one.
Maybe we need them to widen it out. Outdot's got that covered. What we do is respond to the problems happening in the community, and we're not just making this up.
You didn't hear any of us complaining about it.
Okay, but you're not the only one in the community.
I don't know, nobody else.
You know the ticket, Richard, is, and whether you want to believe it or not, there's 1,000 examples of why you don't want to do something. People that are opposed to something are about 1,001 over those that want to. But it only takes one reason to get something done. And if that's the case, then the question I've got, I kept asking these guys after that very first meeting, how many people have been to y'all's office to talk to you and express their opinions about this corridor? Because I'm gonna tell you my attitude about it. If nobody wants it, damn it, I don't care. Then the heck with it.
Well,
I mean, and then we can turn it into whatever it turns into, and we can stick our heads in the sand.
Well, I've
But
heard
the
some
point
compound
is,
centers, that's the
how
longest
many people
compound centers
that have
I've
been
ever heard.
on Green, that own property on Greeno Road,
Yeah.
in the city of Fairhope,
In the city of Fairhope.
in the city of Fairhope, have been down here and talked to these people in the last 6 months? How
Right.
many? Do you know?
How would I know how
We
many
only
people?
knew about it about 6 months ago.
Well, I understand, but I mean,
And
you
that
knew about it
document-
6 months
you know
ago.
why
How
that-
many of y'all been down there?
You know why that
I've been down
document
there.
is reduced to this document? Because we complained.
Well, I know, but you just hit the nail on the head because you complained. Did you come with with recommendations on how we as a community can solve an issue, solve this problem, and put something together that'd be meaningful for the future, but meaningful for the landowners and meaningful for the future residents
No,
of the
we only
community?
have one question.
The thing
Why
is,
change
the
what we got?
basic disagreement is that we don't think there's a problem.
That's
There's
right.
not a problem.
There's not a problem, and I go back to what Lee said. Lee proved our point, there's no problem.
I never said there wasn't a problem.
But if you don't make a plan, if you don't have a plan, when it becomes a problem, you don't have a solution.
Okay, well, I think back to the basic disagreements there. The city has all of the ordinances in place now for Greeno Road to develop aesthetically pleasing manner as it has over the last 5 or 6 years. Every development on Greeno Road, I think everybody's been pleased with in the last 5 to 7 years perhaps. Name me one.
I'm not going to in this setting, but I would certainly think there's quite a few that could have been done, you know, quite a bit better.
Well, we could say that about downtown Fairhope too.
Sure.
But
And that's all subjective.
generally speaking, I think it's the case, and y'all brought that up in multiple meetings now that what's been developed along Greeno Road has been pleasing.
How does this change what goes on now, though? I don't see that I read anything in here that changes what's available in the zoning ordinance now.
Well, I know
That
personally
specific- Just one
speaking,
specific item, just what
my
what would
business
it be?
can't exist in Fairhope.
I'm sorry?
Our business as plant nursery can exist in any zoning category within the city limits.
And what does that have to do
We're
with the
excluded
overlay district?
from all of it.
How does that change, how does that
Well, it
affect you with
says in
this?
here in a transitional zone, we can't sell anything outside.
Bobby, have you come to us and told me that?
Yes.
No, you haven't. Not as feedback on this. Not
We've
absolutely
only had
not.
this a couple of weeks, and I mentioned.
We have been talking for 6 months. We've been begging
Actually,
for
a
the
year
feedback.
almost.
Okay,
And I mentioned specifically, we can't exist, and I mentioned this to you,
Yeah,
under the
but
zoning.
the whole purpose is y'all just change your zoning because you don't want to exist there, you know, I.
That's not true, we
You know, you
changed our
changed your
zoning
zoning.
to
I
change
mean,
the zoning.
The point is,
We
you're-
didn't
you know, you
change
changed
the
the zoning to sell the
business.
property
But-
and to
but
make some
under
money
this,
because
we
you're
can't-
basically a farm business that can, you know, that can go on $1,000 an acre land in Summerdale, and at some point, you don't see any farms in downtown Bayview.
You, instead of Mr. Turner dominating conversation.
Well, insulting.
we made it easier, better for you, Bobby. We did. In this right here, by the nonconformities, we made that easier. And
So we're back to not being,
let me,
back to being a non-conforming business.
when the green space requirement that you helped create in the tree
I
ordinance.
argued against it, by the way.
Okay, well, then, that made so many businesses on Greeno and non-conforming. That's something we haven't brought up because it's argument, and we've been trying to move forward. But when that 20-foot green space buffer was created, almost every business on Greeno Road was a non-conforming.
But did you know that that also applied to all the other major corridors in Fairhope, and it's been ignored everywhere else except on Greeno Road?
Including the central
No, it
business
hasn't.
district.
Yes, it has.
No,
Yes.
it hasn't. We just went to local court on a one on Mobile Street.
How did
Because
it
we were
apply
enforcing
to
it.
the cancer center that was built next?
I can't say there hasn't
How
been some
did it
slip
apply
through.
to the building that's opposite the Ace Hardware store? Where it was brought into the central business district in order to eliminate the 20-foot green space limit.
I can't
That was
speak
before you
and
were
say
here.
there's not an exception out there.
Central business
But I can
district
tell you,
does
we
that.
are reviewing that,
That's right.
and it is being done. To the point where, what's the Bay Breeze down on Mobile Street? Bay Breeze. Had to go to court for it, because they fought us so much. So to say we're just not looking at those, and that was before me, that was, Buford was here, but that has been looked at on every road that it is addressed to.
It is exempt in the central business district, because you don't want all the buildings on, you know, if we did a building on Fairhope Avenue, you'd have to kick it back 20 feet, that would just be very awkward.
Yeah, yeah. There's a downtown setting, so the buildings are up.
Did you just say that your proposition makes everybody non-compliant on Greeno Road?
No, I said the tree ordinance that was adopted in 1998 made most people. The tree ordinance that was adopted in 1998 made most businesses at that time non-conforming. That are still non-conforming to that requirement.
Are they trying to kick them all out or something?
No.
I mean, why would they do that?
No, the reason I brought that up is because the fear factor of we're going to do something and all existing businesses are going to pay the price. That in '98 was implemented, and we haven't made anybody put in a 20-foot buffer.
I'm trying to listen because it's kind of hard to.
It is. In one meeting, it's hard to come in, and I think there's a lot of misinformation out there on what is going on.
There's probably no better time to address that buffer problem than right now with this ordinance, though, because there are so many uneconomic remnant properties along Greeno Road where Dr. Rod Fairhope could not build on his quarter acre anything. And they're and especially south of town where people are now exempt from this ordinance because they're not in the city limits, but if they were brought in, their property could not be utilized for anything other than their existing residence now.
But that's exactly what we're doing.
Because of the 20-foot buffer.
We've got a range in this. Flexibility between 5 and 20 feet. We didn't increase it at all, but we've given people more buildable area than they have right now. That's what's getting missed in all
in all the zones?
And I think there's an option in every zone. And you also have another option here. Because we haven't talked about this because it's kind of implied with anything in the building, in the zoning ordinance. You can ask for a variance. So if there's a plan in here that's not there, you can go and explain that situation to a board of adjustment and say, we would like to use this one because we have a substandard lot. And that's part of any zone. So there's mechanisms here that are built in to offer you the utmost flexibility that you don't have right now. So I do believe almost any of those are available. I think down to a 10-foot. I might be wrong on that, and I can't read this.
What page are you on, Hunter?
The page 2. Do we have any of the narrow? And if there's not, that's maybe something we can look at. If there's not a 10-foot green space buffer in transitional, maybe that's an option. That's good feedback, and we've been receptive to every piece of good feedback we've gotten. So to just say no government is, I know that's a sentiment out there, but there's not an inch of property in the city that has no rules. And if we're making this situation better and doing exactly what you're talking about, giving people more flexibility and more options, but maybe because of the way it came up or because of some history we've dealt with, what we haven't talked about, and y'all are assuming everybody on Greeno Road wants to stop this, but some of the people with residential property don't.
That is true.
Because they don't have a comfort level. You ask about R1, what could happen with that piece of property?
Actually, we generally support it for that reason.
Right.
Yeah.
And R1 can stay
Generally.
R1.
Yeah.
There's no guarantee that's going to get rezoned.
Exactly. That's what we're worried about. We're worried about that.
So those people that are sitting on residential property might have a different opinion than you, because they don't want to put up with a 50-year fight. Y'all did to get B2.
I'll tell you when they'll change their mind, when somebody comes to them and wants to go business and will offer them a bunch of money.
No, we don't need.
No, I mean that's why they want it, so they can change it to business, move to state school.
It seems to me, for all the years that y'all done battle with the city of Fairhope, my family did also, and whoever else did. When people get very skeptical of your government or past operations. And then the first one of these that came out, it was thrown out in front of everybody, you know, okay, and there was a lot of misunderstanding, a lot of stuff on the street that it may have been true, may not have been true. And then that's kind of gotten down here. So skepticism is running rampant. But I think it appears to be now, having looked at this, and this is the first time I've seen this, just as you mentioned earlier. But it seems to me it's come a long way from where it was before.
Is this the total now? Is this the total number of pages?
If we have any revision, this is all of our proposal. Now,
Okay.
Ken hasn't looked at this from a legal standpoint.
I mean,
so there may be.
think about the difference.
Yeah.
Think about the difference now between this and what you
Tell me,
had
I
before.
went through every word of that other one.
Now, there
I
is-
went through every word of this one.
For transparency, one thing we'll have to do, and we haven't had a chance to draw these diagrams. Every one of these will have a counterpart diagram, what it looks like on a corner lot. So,
Corner lot.
on the corner, yeah, there ain't many of those, but that'll be a diagram unto itself. So what we're not suggesting at this point is stretching this back into those core, back into the residential neighborhoods, even though some of those are commercial, like Fairhope Avenue past the point. So we'll just clarify kind of where these regulations end.
Go back again, what you said at the beginning of this meeting. How long do we have before the
2
moratorium?
weeks. Oh, no, the moratorium is May 1st.
May 1st. So, I mean, we gotta get on with getting on. Either we're gonna do it or we ain't gonna do it, and
Y'all extended it the last 2 times.
It's
We
probably,
don't
have the
Yeah.
ability to do that, it's city council.
But
That's correct.
And we got to end, and y'all feel free to contact me. I won't say, I don't want to end on the last word, but
I'm gonna have the last word.
yeah, well, we'll let you get it. But I do want to say
I'd like me
something.
to speak for 5 minutes for the end. Would it be Bob, you can close it out?
You keep making our point.
Well, and
I really want to talk about density, but we'll save that for another time.
I can tell you all about the people that are moving here that want to build ugly buildings if you want to talk about it.
yeah, and that's what y'all don't.
They bring smoke and stuff.
I can't talk about. I have
Give
ethical
me,
duty not to talk about
bus line
projects
ticket
we-
out.
We hear from.
I think,
Y'all get together,
Hunter,
make a fund.
For all of y'all on the commission, I can't tell you how much we appreciate Hunter speaking with us hours at a time.
Yes, yes,
Every
honest to
question
goodness.
we have, he
Honest.
has tried to answer.
For Thursday.
But he's spent countless hours with all of us.
Well, good.
Who have requested that.
That's wonderful.
The way we look at this, and I'll be quick, is it's almost like, okay, something's gotta be done with Greeno Road because, oh my God, the Greens property is B2. Oh geez, even though there are restrictions, you know, who knows what they might put on that property. So a few of us must be punished. So it's easier to punish everybody, you know, on Greeno Road, so the city can have what it wants, so the city can have what they want Greeno Road to look like, instead of trusting the people who built the city. And it's like, nobody can buy cold medicine anymore because some people abused it. You have to go to the pharmacy and sign a thing and give them your driver's license. It's the same thing here. Punish everybody based on the actions of a few. And Lee, you've made the point.
think this whole thing-
I'll be Henry.
You made the point. You've all kind of made the point of the people built Fairhope, and the things that have happened and evolved were done through individuals, through businesses. Nobody mandated it be done. But now that it's done and people think it's a good idea, well, by God, the government's got to come in and bring the hammer down and tell you it's got to be done. And it won't stop. And
You know,
so,
realistically
anyway,
though,
that's
when I look at this now, and we all ought to understand that underlying zoning really is separate and apart from what this document is. And it is the zoning that's already in place. You got B2 zoning. You can do whatever you want to in B2 zoning,
No, we can't.
for the most part.
It's a great improvement over the initial.
I agree 100%, because I didn't understand the first one anyway.
No, it was nightmarish.
We'll have words afterwards, Commissioner Dias. And by the way, for the record, the Magnolia landfill is on the coastal birding trail.
The coastal birding, it ought to, because that's where all the garbage goes go.
Yeah. All right, I just want to say to y'all, if the energy it's taken to do this, I appreciate your comments. That's taken a lot of energy, a lot of long hours, a lot of weekends from both of us. And are you going to have that opportunity next time? If y'all can help us get this to a point where we can all live with it, I think we're better off for the solution we have. And this isn't going to go away. It's going to keep coming back. I mean, I can promise you that. This is something that people are going to bring up over and over. And it might be 5 years from now, and I wish Gary Wolf was here because he told me they don't have to worry about me. I'm sorry to hear that, but he said, and he said it jokingly, but there's a ring of truth to it. What I say really doesn't matter because there'll be another one in a couple of years. And they're going to have another something else to say, and you know, there's some truth to that. What do we got here? How far have we come? And can we get something we can all live with? And frankly, we've got about 2 weeks to get there before they see it. And then it kind of gets locked up for 6 weeks until it gets to council. And then council can actually make some changes. So that's the opportunity at this point, and we just don't have much time left. So still welcome comments if you can get them to us pretty quick. And preferably just send us an email at this point in time because I want to see my wife.
To me, the worst thing that can happen, and
Okay,
great. We can televised.
Mm-hmm.
You're not gonna send this to council, are you? The worst thing that could happen when you don't have the council involved in these discussions is that it gets to the council and then they can make changes. What would they be basing their changes on? So we all can come to some kind of resolution to whether or not we'll do this, or whether or not this is appropriate, and whether or not they've done the job they need to do. We've done our job, and y'all gotten what you think needs to be done here. It would be a heck of a lot easier sending council under those circumstances than with some kind of cloud over them. So, there they are, right there.
All right.
Thank you. One other thing. You never addressed non-conformity, did you?
Yeah.
50%. No, I see it right here. But what about a hurricane? 50% of your property is destroyed.
That's already in the ordinance.
We've got, I mean, look,
already
if we
in the
start planning
ordinance,
for
isn't it?
every little
Yes.
thing, that you're gonna have, you know, that's
It's
gonna be,
already in
look
the
at
ordinance.
Panama City, Mexico Beach, they have to address that as a whole city, not as a zoning issue. I mean,
Why is it in here then?
It's not in there.
Yeah, it is. Non-conformity is in here.
Because y'all asked for it to be in there.
No,
You asked us
we
to
asked-
address it.
We asked for also not to have a year thing to build back, because we could never get it built in a year, and not to address the hurricane.
It-
Hurricane wipes it out, then you don't.
But I don't,
Yeah.
but I don't believe
It was
we haven't it completed.
It was
in a year. It's
180
having-
days. You just have to start.
That time doubled from 6 months.
Ooh. Have you ever tried to build
That's-
anything lately?
You don't
But
have to
that's
have
not,
it
that's not
completed.
building, that's getting a communication.
That's getting a building
We don't do
permit.
it at time what it was.
And it was already
That
in the
is-
ordinance.
You'll never address that.
You can't argue.
Now we're on the same page.
All you do is